How's it going, everyone? It's Chow here, and today we are going to talk a little bit about muscle contraction, more specifically the contraction cycle. So let's get started. Okay, so the key ion within the contraction cycle is calcium. When you have an influx of calcium, it's going to bind to this bluish molecule over here called troponin. Troponin is going to then displace tropomyosin. So tropomyosin is these orangish looking lines over here. And when calcium binds to troponin, troponin is going to displace tropomyosin, therefore exposing the myosin binding sites. So myosin's down here, we have actin filaments over here. And by calcium binding to troponin, troponin is going to displace tropomyosin and open up the binding sites for the myosin down here on the actin. So what happens is we have hydrolysis of ATP. When ATP is hydrolyzed, we reset basically the heads of the myosin. So by hydrolyzing the ATP, we reset the heads like so. Then what happens is we have an ADP and a phosphate molecule. So this is going to go slowly towards step 2. Remember, calcium is still bound to troponin, which is displacing tropomyosin. Here, ADP and phosphate and inorganic phosphate are still bound to the myosin heads. When the phosphate group leaves, the myosin actually goes up and binds to the actin, like so. So we have the leaving of the phosphate, the ADP still attached, and now we have binding to the actin. So now the myosin is bound to the actin, forming this cross bridge. What then happens is ADP leaves. So ADP leaves the system, and when ADP leaves, there's going to be a power stroke. So when ADP leaves, we actually have the myosin moving like this, as shown here. So the myosin is actually moving towards the right side, and it's kind of arcing back down to the left. So you can see right here, this angle decreased. So the myosin contracted. So this is the power stroke. And this power stroke is initiated by the leaving of the ADP. So now we have this kind of conformation over here. If ATP is present, then ATP is going to bind to the myosin heads. When ATP binds to the myosin heads is going to be displaced. So it's going to disconnect from the actin. So it's the binding of the ATP to the myosin heads that causes the separation of the actin and the myosin heads, like so, as shown here. Then, if calcium is still present in the system, then that ATP is going to hydrolyze, right? So hydrolysis of ATP is going to reset the head. So hydrolysis of ATP, as shown here and here, is going to reset the heads and get them ready for another contraction cycle. And then once ATP is hydrolyzed, the myosin heads are reset. And then, if calcium is still present in the system, we're going to have a binding again through the release of an inorganic phosphate, and then the whole process starts all over again. There are actually some really good animations online that you can check out, and it's definitely important to understand, and it's going to be useful, those animations, to get you a visual idea of what exactly happens during the contraction cycle. But this is just the basic rundown of the whole process. So I hope you found it at least mildly useful. Best of luck studying, and I will see you in the next video.